Nick and Nikki, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, super excited to talk to you guys today. And we actually had a confession from a caller, and we want to I'd love to discuss it with you a little bit further, perhaps get some of your life lessons around some guidance for this particular person. And hence why, I brought you guys on, given your stories. So what we'll do is we'll cut first straight to that confession.
Hi, Leonie. I wanted to call and say that I'm struggling. My partner is currently sick with a terminal illness. We have one child. I'm scared of losing him. I'm scared to be a single parent. I'm scared for the future. I'm not sure what my question is here. I just felt inclined to share.
Okay, so now that we've heard that person's pretty raw confession, right? I mean, you can almost hear the anguish in that message. And, firstly, my heart goes out to this person who called in. Nick, I'd like to start with yourself. You've experienced sort of a similar thing where your previous wife passed away in 2020 from a rare form of cancer, which is just shocking. So, my sympathies go out to you as well. And, leaving you as a single parent with Xander. Talk to me about that time, particularly being a parent as well. What was that like for you?
Yeah, it's there's a lot there. It's hard. I think there's lots of different sort of stages you go through from so my late wife Nicole had been diagnosed in 2018 when my little boy Xander was 12 months old. So just coming up to his first birthday. His first birthday actually was her first chemo, and she passed away about 15 months later. So he was sort of two and a half when she passed away. And I mean, one great thing was that he was so young. He was sort of naive to it all, even though we would talk to him, but he was only 2.5. And so he was the shining light on some very, very dark days when Nicole was very, very ill. And after she passed, I think it was just a big adjustment factor because I'd been sort of juggling single parenting him when she was ill because, from sort of 3 or 4 months into her diagnosis, she wasn't able to walk. So she was, she couldn't do as many things as obviously she wanted to. So I was sort of looking after Xander, but also being her full-time carer. So one thing that I realised after she passed was how much time I had spent caring for her. I thought I'd sort of split my time parenting and caring, but after she passed, I found myself with more time than I thought I probably was going to have as a single parent. And so, it's a sort of weird one. And then, having those conversations with Xander and making sure he understood what had happened. My goal in life is ensuring Xander remembers. My sole goal in life is ensuring he remembers his mum. And most of us don't have memories of when we're 2.5. And so much of that's happening as time goes on. And stories that we share with him now, obviously he didn't know Nicole, but she can sort of talk about things that I've told her back to him as well. So, but you do have to you've got to be very blunt with kids about some of this stuff. And we dance around the subject of death as adults, and it's not a comfortable subject, but it's an important one, and we have to just confront it head on because unfortunately it happens to everyone. And so the sooner we come to terms with it, the better, and letting our kids understand what it means and allow them to ask the questions and to grieve in their own way is important. So, but the parenting thing, it's a constant juggling act.
I think it's kind of, sorry, I am going to butt in there because Nick, he does downplay it a lot as to, it's crazy hard. And I didn't, I lost my partner, but I didn't lose my partner when we had a child together as well. And I think one of the things that I really, Nick and I obviously have very different conversations around the dinner table, probably compared to other couples. But is actually for this, person that's called in that, we are really, really sorry to hear, what has happened to them, but it's actually for for them to come to terms with what's happened. It's a big thing. And once you are able to come to terms with what's happened and the prognosis and, all of that, then it's kind of having a bit of a roadmap, moving forwards, what are the things that you want to do? But one of the beautiful things that Nicole did, and I think we're so lucky nowadays that we've got a video phone on us constantly. Record those videos of your husband or your partner interacting with the children, because sometimes it might not be that they can remember, but when they can view back a video with their parent and hear their voice. Like, I lost my mum a couple of years ago, and watching videos of her talking is such an important thing. Like, hearing her voice again, like, that's what we miss. We can see photos, but actually hearing that person's voice. So just doing things like that. Nicole wrote letters for Xander, and him being able to have those things to open and read himself when he is able to, they're the type of things that you might not always want to think that you're going to lose that person, but just in a way you kind of have to sit around the dinner table and go, how do you want to be remembered? How do you want your kids to remember you? Okay, let's create that box now, because you don't want to miss that, and you want to be involved in that, because I think that's also important, being involved in that whole situation of putting those memories together, because that then at least your children are going to have those memories with you.
Yeah, I think I suspect, as was the case for Nicole, but your listener's partner, scared about what's coming, but also leaving, their partner as a single parent, and how to help them through that journey, if you're able to, is do exactly as Nikki said. Nicole left these beautiful legacy videos for Xander on, what she loved about him, what she loved about me, her wishes for us. We talked about all these sort of things about, her desire for me to fall in love again, and if I wanted to have more children, because she wanted siblings for Xander, and to never blame me for her illness as he got older. And she even did her own video for her own eulogy, right, at the funeral. Like, these sort of things that not everyone can do, and I still don't know to this day how she had the courage to do those sorts of things. But often people say, oh, you're doing so well, you and Xander are so well adjusted, and you've got Nikki, and it's amazing, and you've got little Leo now. And I often say it's not us. We're only doing amazing because of the way she prepared us for a life without her, right? That what she did in the lead up to that time enabled us to live our best life, unfortunately without her. But sometimes these things happen, and I guess with the circumstances your listeners in, that they do have the time to do something. Some people don't have the time. It can be a very sudden death, right? So trying to turn some of it into a positive, which can be, extremely hard. It is. And, it's a hard thing to process, and I'm sure they're going through some tough days.
Yeah, absolutely. I just feel like she must have been such an incredible woman, as you said. What a force of nature to be able to, put all of those things together. I'm curious. So you've got a child together, is that correct? The two of you, and then you've got Xander. Look, for those listening who perhaps it's not their partner that's passed away, maybe it's a friend, a grandparent, or whatever that looks like. That's always a very tough conversation to have with your children. Now that so how old are your children now?
So Xander just turned 5, or he's 5 and a quarter, off to school next year, and Leo turned 1 this week.
Okay, right. So 5-year-old probably understands, obviously, that bit more. So how are you communicating, and how would you be communicating death, of others, I guess? And I ask because some tips perhaps for those listening as well.
Very, So after Nicole passed, I became really weirdly interested in fixated on grief, and read lots of grief books with people like David Kessler and others, and that have written these books. And I, the one takeaway from lots of that sort of reading and self-reflection was just this need to be blunt. We often use terms like, mummy passed away during the night. Passed away is not a helpful comment for a child. They have no idea what that means. Mummy went to heaven. Heaven's just another suburb. When's she coming back, right? So mummy has died and gone to heaven was how I framed it to Xander. I remember the morning after she passed. And, the first time you say that is, I still remember is very, very confronting. But once you say it over and over, it does get easier. And so that understanding of life and death, and they go, oh, okay, well, why? Well, she was sick, because to a 2.5-year-old cancer means nothing. But as he's gotten older, okay, she had cancer. Okay, do all people die of cancer? No. Mummy Nikki's business does this, works with people impacted by cancer. We've had friends that have had cancer. Gone, oh, you've got cancer. My mummy had cancer. Are you going to die? No, not everyone. You sort of work through it. You need to be careful you don't go beyond what they understand. But I think allowing them to ask the questions, it is, I think it's often, when we talk with Xander's doing his orientation for school at the moment for next year, right? And so we've spoken to the school, they know the situation, and I said to them, I'm not worried about him, right? I'm worried about the other kids, because they're the ones that haven't spoken about death at home, because perhaps they haven't had to and they haven't been around it. I said, he's going to bring up the fact that he's got 2 mummies. He's got Mummy Nikki here, he's got Mummy Nicole in heaven. Mummy Nicole is the elements. If it rains, Mummy sent the rain. If there's butterflies, that's Mummy. Like, he's absolutely fine. He's extremely well adjusted. It's to the other children, when they hear that, you can just see
the teachers as well.
The teachers as well, being prepared. Exactly.
And
how they can talk about it, and just helping them frame it, and just, I think, opening the conversation. Don't hide away from it is my advice.
And even when Xander's been at daycare and had little his sibling Leo when he was born and stuff like that, and a lot of, because of COVID and because there's not been that interaction kind of like at daycare pickups and stuff, a lot of the parents didn't actually know our situation. And so, we've got a WhatsApp group with, the other parents at daycare, and we actually told them the story on WhatsApp, because again, it's kind of, for one of Xander's friends to then go home and then say to their parents, oh, Xander's mummy passed away. And they kind of don't know the context of it. They don't know what's happened. Was it sudden? What's going on? So it's kind of just, okay, we'll open up the conversation there. The teachers knew all about it and stuff. And so it kind of is just being very open with the people around them, because especially with a child, you've got the child to deal with, but then you do have, all the surrounding people, the teachers, the other students, all of that kind of stuff, that it's important that other people know, because at the end of the day, it's probably going to be some other kid that goes up to Xander and says something to him, and not meaning to, as kids do, but they might just not know the situation, and we don't want Xander to ever feel that he was to blame or anything, because he wasn't. But I just feel that sometimes it's really important to know the context of stuff, and even with Leo, we plan to be very open with him as to, like Xander and Leo have different mummies, and this is, and we have pictures everywhere. Leo will see Mummy Nicole as he grows up, but I think one thing that we've found, and even in terms of, both of us separately with our psychologists, is we've got to remember that as adults, and as parents, we overthink things way more than children do. Children see life much more simply than us, and sometimes, a lot of the times, it's such a beautiful thing. They see things as they are. They don't overcomplicate them. And I think even when Nick and I met, and when I was being introduced to Xander, we overcomplicated it. We were thinking of every different scenario that could possibly happen, that he could say, that he could do. And I think both of our psychologists were like, he's a 4-year-old. Just think about this kind of thing. And I think it is sometimes that you have to kind of back away and just go, in simplified version of this, what is it?
And they'll move on quickly. I remember Xander, shortly after Nicole passed, was with his cousin Patty, who's 6 weeks older than him, and they were having a chat one morning. They got into our place late at night. They live a couple of hours away, and they woke up in the morning, crack of dawn, as 3-year-olds do, and Xander pointed up, and there was a big picture of Nicole on the wall, and Patty, and he's like, "There's my mummy," and Patty goes, "Yeah, she died." And I'm at the door with Nicole's sister. I'm very close with Kat, and we sort of like have each other a hug, and you're crying, Yeah, I know. Yeah. Okay, should we play cars now? Yeah, okay, great. Like they just, and you're just like, it's a beautiful thing. Like they just had this moment, they understood, they both love Nicole, mummy, let's move on, and then they just get on with it. Whereas for adults like that, okay, let's take that in, and it takes us longer. But as Nikki said, they see things in a much more simple light than we do. They complicate things, and kids don't.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's beautiful, and it's, kind of relieving in a way that you're like, okay, I don't, it's not potentially the same impact as what I'm feeling as an adult. Changing gears a little bit, and Nikki, you sort of alluded to this. How was the transition when, little Xander had you in his life, and how did you, and look, again, speaking to those people who might be listening who are in a situation where they're looking to blend families and things like that, what was that experience like for you guys?
It was, Xander was amazing. He was like, I think again, I was so nervous, I was just like, okay, this is scary. Like, and Nick and I had spoken about, this wasn't just me, being a quick part of his life and moving on kind of thing. Like we knew by this point that we were very serious, and we wanted to make this work and stuff like that. And so I knew kind of what I was stepping into, but then at the same time, for me personally, it was a very different situation, because I was stepping into a role where this child didn't have a mum anymore. She had passed away. Xander was absolutely amazing. My psychologist gave me some really, really amazing tips, because I was very upfront with her as to what was going on, and she gave me suggestions the first time I met him, to bring a gift that I could play with him together, because he was only 3 at the time as well. So I bought something that we could go and play on the lake with together and stuff, and he still got it now, and he still remembers that was the toy that I got him when we first met. And there were all these tips that she gave of like meeting in like an outside setting, not at somebody's home and stuff like that. And he was just, and I think for any of your listeners that either coming into somebody's life or introducing somebody into their life and into their children's life, like it is such a challenging thing, because you're like, well, am I their friend? Like, am I their parent? Like, what's going on and stuff? And it's different for every single person out there. I can't give a cookie cutter advice, because everybody's situation is completely different. With Xander, we took it relatively slow. Like, we spent time together. We'd spend like, an hour or so together, and then it extended to longer. And then we had like a sleepover and stuff like that. And it was, I think the fact that he was 3, it was easy to have that relationship and that communication. I can only imagine what it's like when it's a teenager, or when it's an older child.
Or even, I always think even at his age now, like trying to bring something, like if had I been, had lost Nicole and perhaps been single for 2 or 3 years after, and then tried to bring someone in, when he just had me for say 3 or 4 years by ourselves, I think it would be very difficult, not impossible, but it just would have changed the dynamic. Whereas I was able to sort of lay off the fact he was only 3, and he's a friend of mine, and it was the only person that he'd met that I'd seen post Nicole, and that was important not to confuse him or anything like that. And as Nikki said, we were pretty serious by that point. But equally, we didn't wait. I think we'd been going out 4 months at the time, because I thought, Nikki, from my perspective, Nikki had seen me as, the guy we went on nice dates with, we went to nice dinners and things. And I'm like, but I'm also a dad, and I'm a dad all the time. This isn't a sort of co-parenting or one of those sort of situations, and you need to see me as a dad. And neither of us are getting any younger. We've both been through a lot, and we don't want to waste each other's time, frankly. So it was sort of like, let's, are you ready? And I think you're like, yeah, okay, let's do this and see how it goes. And thankfully it all worked out really, really well. But I think it's very age dependent on the child, and the way they've sort of adjusted to things and how you bring them in. And I think you also just have to trust your gut a bit. You know your child best. You know them better than anyone else. You know how they'll react. And I think, trust your gut. Seek out, professional advice from psychs and that. But, trust yourself, and what feels right is probably right for you and your children.
Nikki, you mentioned something there which is quite interesting. Your psych suggested don't meet at neutral territory, not at someone's house. Why do you think that is?
I think there's just, you end up with attachments. Like, I had attachments to the place where I live. Like, Xander has attachments to his home. That's his ground. That's his safe place. And me going into that safe place, me being a stranger and going into that safe place, as much as, I was seen as Nick's friend at that point, it's not, you want it to be a neutral ground for both of you. Although, people would look at it as he's only 3 years old, does it really matter? But at the end of the day, he would see his home with his dad as his safe haven. He knew that this was his place to retreat to. Me going into that space, just it wasn't appropriate. And I see, and his enjoyment factor was the playground. He could show me around the playground. He could show me his favorite swings and stuff that, and even still, we'll go to places, we take our friends to, different areas of Sydney and stuff like that, which are his favorites. And he loves to be tour guide, and he loves to show people around. And so it kind of gave him the opportunity to be able to kind of own it a little bit, and if he wasn't comfortable with me, he knew that he could go off and go and play in the playground and have his own time.
And I guess from my perspective, I wanted it to go well, right? Because I'm I'm falling for Nikki at this point big time, and it's like, okay, well, I want Xander to like Nikki. Well, where's a place where kids tend to be very, very happy? Parks, right? So I was like, let's go there and not have a meltdown at home over something or other. Right? So I was like, and I think as well, if you're at home, and I just moved into a new place, so it probably wasn't going to be as big an issue. But had Nicole and I lived here where we are now, and bringing someone new into the home, and there's pictures of Nicole, and the first time you could see questions like, are you going to be my mummy now? These sorts of things that, they're very, they're questions you want your children to ask, but not the first time you meet them, right? Yeah. So how do you make that a relaxing, fun, enjoyable experience for the child's like, oh, that was a nice day. I got to meet them, and they paid me lots of attention. You don't always pay me that much attention, it's got to feel good for everyone.
But then also not be over the top. I think that's the other thing that I do feel, even some of my friends that have been meeting their friends' partners, their partners' kids and stuff like that, don't want it to be OTT, because then that's also kind of it goes the other way. You just want it to be a normal Saturday where you go to the park. You don't want it to be that you're, I don't know, going if we went to Luna Park, you'd probably oh, what's going on here?
A bit suspicious.
And so it's and I think the other thing that my site did mention as well was to kind of keep it relatively short as well. It's not like a full day thing or a full afternoon, especially with a 3-year-old. You want it to be an hour or two. So that was the other thing. It was, but it's now, however long, 2 years on, it's it's Nick and I always talk about it's important for me to have that alone time with Xander. We'll go and do stuff together. Obviously we have Leo now as well, and Leo being a little baby, a lot of my attention goes on Leo, but it's important for Xander to still have that time with me. So
that definitely that changed the dynamic again, right? When we had little Leo, because it was sort of like a time where Nikki and Xander were building up a really special bond, and then this little one's come into the world, and rightly so deserves almost all of mum's attention, and she's trying to split her time, but baby needs a mum, and so but that's typical behaviour of a child seeking attention, right, regardless of the family dynamic. So I think, but yeah, just being conscious of those things, and whilst it's important to do things as a family unit, it's also important that perhaps a parent takes this child for some time out and takes this one, and therefore they can get that attention. So
absolutely,
yeah.
We haven't touched on your story actually, Nikki. So your partner also passed away from cancer in 2018. I'm mentioning that as well because it's quite unusual. I don't know. I mean, is it? I don't know. I guess not anything in life is often usual, but the fact that you both had experienced relationships in the past where, your partners had passed away, I can only imagine what a toll that would take on you. You find each other. Did you find it difficult to let someone in again, given the hurt and, all of that from mourning your past partners? Like, talk to me about getting back into a relationship with each other.
Yeah, so I lost Mike in 2018, and again, it was to cancer. We knew that he was terminal. He was going to pass away. So again, very open conversations as to what life is going to look like afterwards. Now, just as, I'm sure many of your listeners are like, okay, so Nick lost his partner, Nikki lost her partner. We didn't meet at a widow and widowers club, as many people think we might have done. I'm sure those things do exist, but we actually met on an online dating app. And I think the reason that, as many people do these days, and I think the reason that both of us kind of were intrigued by each other was Nick had actually put on his profile that he was he put that he was a widow. He didn't realize that it was actually widower for a male. And so
you learn these things over time. And it's like, there's one at the end. Yeah.
So Nick had put that he was a widower, and I think we just kind of got talking because I was intrigued. I was like, there's not many people out there that are / there's not anyone out there that would kind of put it on their profile. And yeah, we kind of got talking, and I hadn't put it on my profile, but it was very, very obvious that I had lost my partner because the company that I started up, it was very public to my profile is that I lost my partner. That's why I started my company. And so I think when we both started to talk, we were like, oh, okay, this is interesting. And I think it was because of our circumstances. We didn't lose our partners suddenly. So that guilt and stuff wasn't probably as significant as it might be for other people. We, had spoken to our partners about moving on, and it was still very difficult to let somebody in. And, I'm not going to lie that every single time that either one of us complain about any kind of ache and pain, your brain does go to that awesome thing that, happened to us a couple of years ago. It's always, that's always going to be the case. But I think it is very different, I think, for us compared to, there wasn't that guilt there in that sense, or there wasn't for me. I felt that I actually felt extremely grateful that I could love somebody again and be happy again, because I think that was the thing that I was most scared of, was that I was never going to meet anyone that was as good, that was going to be like Mike, that was going to make me as happy as Mike did, kind of thing. And I think that was the thing that I was so scared of not happening, that I was always going to compare people to him, because it wasn't that he'd done anything wrong. It wasn't that, he'd hurt me or anything like that. So I was scared that I was going to start comparing people. And I think for me and for Nick, Mike and Nicole will always be there. We talk about them, we laugh about them. I'll do stuff and Nick will just go, that's such a Nicole thing. It's unbelievable. And, I think that we have a very different relationship though. I don't think there are going to be a huge amount of people out there in this world that have something like we do, where,
I agree with everything Nikki said. I think I didn't feel guilty per se. Like the questions of is it too soon absolutely came up because, I met Nikki, a bit under a year after Nicole passed away, and I had started dating, within sort of a few months of Nicole passing. And I remember initially downloading one of the apps and then getting rid of it because I had this moment where I was like, it's too soon. What am I doing? And then I'm like, hang on, these are things we talked about. And, that world, like Nicole and I had been together. We'd met when we were 18. We've been together for 17 years. So the dating world just didn't exist when we met. So that was a whole new world to me. And putting it on my profile. I didn't initially have it on my profile, it's clear, but I found myself wanting to tell people. I was probably tell by today, we're very open about being through, and I was like, you can't possibly go and have a drink or a coffee with someone and just lay this news on them and expect them to be okay with it. You've got to give people, I think, some warning with some of this stuff, and it doesn't. My view is always it's not something that defines who I am, but it does shape the sort of person I am and how I view the world. And so I think it's just important people know that. And I always say to people, the best thing about the apps is you don't know who didn't swipe on you, left or right. Whoever didn't like you, you never know who they are. And that's a great thing, right? So use that to benefits. I was like, well, if I put it on there, then I don't have to like awkwardly try and bring it up on a chat before catching up with someone.
Yeah.
And that was probably the best thing I ever did, because all the people I met were just lovely. A lot of people that experienced cancer themselves, friends that you met through it. And then, I think a lot of the people I got chatting to or dated there were lots of women who sort of accepted my past and my story, but Nikki was the only one that engaged in it, that I felt truly comfortable sharing with. She would ask questions. We wanted to talk about each other's partners. Like she said, we'll have a laugh about, each of them often. And Xander knows that Nikki lost Mike. And, these are conversations we want to have. You want to talk about it. And I can understand that for many people, if you hadn't been through it, coming into that situation would be, next to impossible. It would be very, very difficult to do without having someone that's been through it and gets it. So, it's a bit of a minefield. But once again, I think, trust your gut.
And I think it's also important to know that a lot of that guilt and a lot of that kind of like voice in your head ends up coming from a lot of exterior stuff. It comes from other people's expectations. It comes from other people's opinions. Like, is it too soon? That's actually you questioning because other people are going, is it too soon? And you kind of, I think sometimes, like Nick said, it's trusting your gut and actually just listening to yourself and listening to your own heart, listening to your own mind as to what's right for you, because what's right for Nick or I isn't going to be right for every other person out there. And and it's not listening to, because I think one thing that Nick and I both found was that as much as we were able to comprehend and understand, both Nicole and Mike passing away, a lot of other people that hadn't seen the daily battle that those people had been through weren't ready. They weren't ready to say goodbye because they didn't know how much pain they were in or whatever it was. And so it's a lot of the time it's other people around you that make you feel like you're not ready. I think sometimes just retreating to yourself and just listening to what
how other people are going to interpret. Like one of my great fears was, I'm very, very close with, and to this day extremely close with, and will always be with Nicole's family. We have a very, very strong bond, and they've sort of adopted Nikki as another daughter, which is and they're Xander's grandparents. So it's absolutely and Leo's now, right? Yeah. So they'll always be part of our lives. And I remember thinking, I want to tell them that I'm now dating again, and I've met Nikki, and I sort of went back and forth in my head about how this would make them feel. And the feeling of loss as a part, as a husband is so different to that of a parent, to that of a sibling. Everyone is grieved in a different way, and that loss is different. And I'm not sure why I was worried. They were, as understanding and beautiful as ever. And but those are, it's often the impact on other people. How are they going to interpret it, rather than you might be ready yourself, but it's all those things that come up that you sort of have to navigate. But if you've got good people around that you trust, that you've been through everything with, they'll be with you and they'll stand next to you. So I'm very lucky that we've got them, and we've got Nikki's family as well. So our boys have got 3 sets of grandparents, which is beautiful.
So lovely. So many people that, are there to support and love you all. To that, if we circle back to what this person has written in, so essentially they're going through the thick of it right now. You've both been there. So there's 2 questions. I'll start with what helped you during that time? We've spoken about how you communicated to your child, obviously Nick, or Nikki, that it was a tough time, obviously, but what advice could you give to someone like this caller who is going through a really tough time at the moment in trying to just get through the day?
I'll go first.
Go for it.
Because you're... Yeah. I would say one of the things that I reflect back on now and think was so important, and something that I didn't do, and I wish somebody had actually sat me down and gone, this is really important. Looking after yourself. I think as this person, as this caller, has told us, like, they're the carer, as they are the partner, but they're also going to be the carer for this person. And it takes its toll. It's so hard, because you've got this person, there's so many different points to it, but you've got this person that is sick, that you love, that you care for, that is the parent of your child. You don't want them to go. You're trying to do everything possible to mean that they don't go. You don't want to see them in pain. Like, seeing anyone that you love in pain is just awful. But you need to understand that if you don't look after yourself, and if you aren't that strong bodied person, like, if you get sick or anything, then you're also not going to be able to help them. So take that time out. Like, I had some amazing friends around me, and they would literally just be like, okay, today for an hour we're taking you for a coffee, like, and we're gonna some of them were just like, oh, we're going to pay for you to go and have a massage. And the massage thing didn't help with me, because I just lay on the massage table and just think about all the stuff I needed to do, because that's what I do. But the massages didn't help me. But it was more, for example, I don't know, going for a pedicure, but with your friend. So you were able to chat with them. You weren't thinking in your own head. You were, you had that time out for yourself. And, it doesn't have to be pampering yourself, but it could just be somebody coming over and cooking with you. Again, seems like such a strange thing, but cooking can be such a chore for some people. But if you've got the other person that's there with you, you're talking to them about whatever it is you want to talk about, but you've got that company that's there for you guys to have that time together. Again, for me personally, somebody coming over and saying, I'll help look after Mike for the next couple of hours, you go off and do the things that you need to do, again, didn't help me, because I'd have the carer guilt, like this guilt that would be over me, just like, I should be, doing this other stuff or whatever it was. Having the company there really helped me. But it was just looking after yourself and not allowing that carer guilt to always take over, because you put yourself at the absolute bottom, especially I imagine when you're a parent as well. You put the person that you love that is going through the cancer first, and then you put your child second, and then you are all the way down at the bottom. And you just need to move yourself up every now and again, because you have to fill your tank, because otherwise you're not going to be there to fill anyone else's.
Yeah, completely agree. That time, for me, it was a game of golf, and I
still is.
But it's so important, and I do truly believe it makes you a better wife or husband, a better carer, and a better parent. If you take that time. My only other advice, I think we touched on at the start, is just having, and they, the listener may have already done this, but making sure you've had some of those conversations. They are very, very hard conversations to have, but try to have them do the legacy video thing, because it will be easier for you longer term. And that's what your partner wants, right? So, because sometimes it could be the carer sitting there going, I want to have these conversations, but the person battling the illness struggling to, have those conversations because they're just not dealing with it, not grieving with it. So it's a hard one. I was very lucky with Nicole because she worked with cancer patients. She knew very early on when she was diagnosed that things weren't good. And so she confronted it head on. She made us all come to the table. This is going to happen. This is what it's going to look like. Simultaneously, the fight of her life, and tried to still be here. But she enabled us to have those sorts of conversations. So I think having some of those tough conversations
and seeking support as well. There's so much out there. Obviously friends and family, whoever's there, but then also just in terms of like the healthcare system and stuff, like there's psychologists, palliative care, there's all of that that's out there, but sometimes you do have to search for it. You have to ask for it. And I think just knowing that there is actually a lot out there, there's a lot that can be accessible to you, but you just need to find out about it, and you just need to really be open. Just if you're struggling, tell the people around you that you're struggling, because it can be such a lonely thing otherwise. And I feel like I found that a fair bit with Mike, that I found it really lonely, because I feel that a lot of my friends they couldn't come to terms with the fact that somebody that was around their age was going to pass away. And my family were in the UK, so I didn't have that close proximity of family close by. But there's amazing charities out there, and just great people out there that have set things up that help you.
Absolutely. And even, podcasts, right? Listening to people's struggles. I started this podcast out of my own struggle with pre and postnatal depression, and I felt very lonely in that as well. And that's why I've invited so many people on to share in their struggles too, because it just normalizes your experience and makes you feel less alone. I'd love to know, I feel like the both of you would have built such great resilience given, all that you've been through. What would you say? I know this is a little bit of a hard one, but when you think about life now and really how fragile it is and how beautiful it is, how has your opinion on this crazy life changed given everything? Like, do you view the world differently now?
Yeah, absolutely. I often make the statement that before Nicole fell ill, if it rained, I got annoyed because work in the city, wear a suit. I'd have a smelly wool suit, and it annoyed me. Now it rains, and I sit there and go, I don't have to water the garden. It just changes your perspective. There's a richness to life, and it's so frustrating that you have to go through such trauma and loss to realise the fragility, as you said, of life, and this richness to it. The colours are brighter, the sounds are clearer. There's just there's magic all around, but we often miss it. And don't get us, take me wrong. Sometimes, we will sit there and be 10 steps ahead and, complain, frustrated about this or something, and then one of us will say to the other one, just remember our angels and what they went through, and then you sort of have this moment, you go, yeah, you're spot on, I have nothing to whinge about. So I think you definitely have a greater appreciation for things. It's frustrating that you have to suffer loss to sort of thing to, I think, truly, experience it.
Yeah, it's definitely, it gives you that, and I think it also goes parallel with frustration, because then you see other people around you that have, this life around them that is, I'm not saying that anybody's life is perfect, but you do sometimes look at other people and go, just take it in, because you don't know how lucky you are that, you have this or whatever it is. And, you know, and don't get me wrong, it's not that Nick and I walk around like on a cloud of rainbows every single day thinking that, you know, the world is fantastic. We definitely still have our frustrations, but I think you don't let the little things bother you.
Yeah.
You kind of, you know, you let something happen in front of you and you just go, and you kind of will voice whatever's gone on, and then you walk away from it. Whereas other people might have it niggling away at them constantly for, you know, however long. And I think you just realize that constant stress that you can put your body under is not good for you. It's not good for anyone around you. You know, we hope that we bring Leo and Xander up into a world where, you know, they do look at the trees when they sway in the wind, and they do look at the rain and, you know, think, yay, you know, the plants are being watered or whatever. It's kind of like, I feel like Xander is, you know, he is beautiful because he embraces life. You know, he's a 5-year-old that just, he gets excited by the most beautiful of things. And, you know, we have moments where I swear, I don't know, you know, and I'm not saying that we are spiritual or whatever it is, but, you know, we'll be frustrated at the world for one thing or another, and then suddenly you'll have these like 2 butterflies that will just fly past, and then you'll just be like, and there's our angels telling us to just take a deep breath and we're fine. And I think it is, you know, I think it's important for any of us to just know that you can get annoyed or frustrated, but also take that deep breath and just know, is it really gonna ruin your life? Is it, you know, is work that awful that you're gonna, you know, I think Nick and I always say to, you know, like, people will be like, oh, I'm so stressed at work, like I can't believe, you know, blah 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 blah, and you kind of just go, is somebody, like, you know, is it a life or death situation? Then you're fine. Like, you can go to your desk tomorrow and you can deal with it.
And I literally had tears in my eyes as you were saying that, because it's so true. And I think we all do really get quite caught up in the world that we're living in. And, you know, I to date, you know, fortunately haven't had, other than my grandmother passing away when I was 7 years old, and I was very close to her, but since then haven't had anyone too close to me, you know, pass away yet. But I just can only imagine, that perspective it would give you. And even before sitting down and having this conversation with you, I was flustered. I'm like, oh God, you know, the million things we've got on the to-do list. And now I'm like, oh my God, like I just want to burst into tears, because everything you're saying, it's just so bloody true. And I love that. And I think it's so important for myself and everyone listening to hear that and to help ground us. I ask every guest this last question. So how has parenthood changed you both as people?
Gosh, that's a tough one. I would say for me, it's definitely, I would say it's the toughest thing that I've ever done. And I have definitely, I've been through a few things in my life. I started my life as, you know, a tennis player. I was a junior pro, moved on to be a physio, probably did an extremely hard degree at uni, to then starting my own business, which became my little baby. You know, I put like all my energy into starting a business to then have a little Leo and Xander in my life. And it's, you know, I think even still sometimes I just wonder how I juggle everything. And I feel like some days I walk away just going, what did I actually accomplish today? Like what happened today? And Nick will, you know, turn around and go, well, you did this, 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 and this. Like, you did, you know, way more. You weren't sat, you know, and totally fine to be sat on the sofa all day watching, you know, a TV show. But I think it's acknowledging it's been the hardest thing I've ever done. And looking at these 2 beautiful boys grow up, and just, you know, like I said before, just hearing a 5-year-old just appreciate life and look at the world in this beautiful way that he looks at it. Looking at the smile that Leo has as soon as he sees his brother Xander. It's like sometimes I'm actually jealous because it's way more than it is to a parent. But I just, I think that's when I sit back and just go, okay, I can't be doing this that badly. But it's the hardest thing that I've ever done. But I also have the most amazing crew of people around me, like Nick and all of Nick's family, all of Nicole's family, all of my family, and my friends are amazing. And, they all know our story. And I think they all acknowledge that it's not easy. The majority of them have all been parents, and they just go, yeah, it's hard. And that thing of anyone that ever turned around and was just like, having kids is the hardest thing you'll ever do. And I was like, is it really? Like, it really is. Yeah. And I feel it's that thing of just the not knowing. Every day is different. When I had my own business, I kind of got to plan my day and, do it the way that I wanted. Now you just don't know what's coming. No. We were rocking up to swimming that one day and Xander vomiting right outside my car, and I was like, oh my God, this has just happened. And Nick was like, well, at least it didn't happen in your car. And,
or in the pool. I was
or
like,
in the pool. This is good.
It's always a positive.
But, again, it was just that one moment where I was just like, oh, my whole day's been thrown off now. So, I think it's the just not knowing every day. But kind of embracing that as well, just being like, okay, what's the world going to throw at me today?
Yeah, what have you got? What about you, Nick? What comes to mind?
I was just going to say, I think for Nikki as well, like she can be way too hard on herself as well, because she went from having her business, as she said, putting everything into that, no children, no partner, to
single life, living in Manly, going down to the beach at 6 a.m. in the morning,
only having to take a towel with you, and toys and whatever else. But going from that to literally within 16 months having a partner and 2 children under 4, like that's full on. So I think, and sometimes I have to remind myself of that. Because I was, a single parent for a while, so having a second pair of hands, so it's different. But I think, it is the hardest thing you will do, but it is the most rewarding thing you'll do, right? Being a parent, it is, seeing a smile on a little one's face from the smallest things, from seeing your siblings, from looking at the trees, from hearing that they get to go to the park in the afternoon or something, it just makes you appreciate the magic of life. And I think as adults sometimes we miss that. We get caught up in everything else going on in the world and work and stress, and just not being present in the moment. Your kids remind you to be present. And so I think that's how it's changed me, just trying to be more present with them, to enjoy every moment.
Absolutely. I love that. Tell our audience how they can find out a little bit more about you guys. And Nikki, you mentioned your business a few times. Tell us a little bit about that too.
So my business, I started when Mike passed away. I just felt that there was a lack of support out there in Australia for younger people that are going through cancer that are of working age. The statistics now show that it's going to be 1 in 3 Australians will be diagnosed with cancer before the age of 85. So it's something that is going to affect us all, if whether it's yourself or a loved one. And so I started a company called My Muse, and it is all about employers bridging the gap with employees that have been diagnosed with cancer or being a carer for somebody with cancer. So we do training, leadership training. We come into companies and actually navigate them on how to be able to help and support somebody that has got cancer or being a carer in the workplace. Proactive solutions and reactive solutions. So whether somebody's been diagnosed or whether you want to be that company that is above and beyond and actually train your team up, because from the statistics it's going to happen within your team, so do something about it now. And it is such a rewarding thing. Like, I created something after Mike passed away because I didn't want other people to have to go through what I did. Work is such an important aspect of so many people's lives. I even feel that when I went on maternity leave, like, even that time, I was navigating being a new mum, but you feel like you lose a sense of your identity because you're not working, you're not doing that thing that you do every single day normally. And so somebody going through cancer that is losing their identity, losing of their body because they haven't got control over their body, to then be able to lose their aspect of work as well, is not something that we should have to do. So yeah, I absolutely love what I do. It has been the easiest thing to go back to after maternity leave. I know that I make a difference in people's lives. So yeah, we're online, mymuse.com.au, on social medias and stuff like that. I'm sure I can put it on your on the profile for the podcast. And Nick is one of our advisors. After through what he went through, really important that we actually get an inside knowledge as to how other people deal with things and stuff as well. Nick's company was absolutely fabulous and fantastic when he was going through all of his things with Nicole. And so companies, when they do it right, have a person that is extremely dedicated, and it's beautiful to see. So yeah,
I'll definitely pop those details in the episode notes. I think it's so inspiring and just so beautiful to see, having gone through the pain, turned that into a bit of a passion and purpose, and that purpose-driven business, and in supporting others going through similar challenges. I think all the best businesses a lot of the best business are bred from that, because it's such a personal, deep-seated passion, within you. So, thank you for the work that you do. And I can only imagine there's a lot of people out there, who you are impacting on the daily. So yeah, that's amazing. I will, as I said, I'll certainly pop those details in the episode notes for those listening to find you. Thank you so much again, guys, for your time and your vulnerability today. It's certainly not an easy topic. There were moments there where I was like, don't choke up, this is real, this is life. And as you said, okay, if you haven't experienced it today, a death, at some point you will. So let's put a few things into place that might support us along the way when that does happen. So yeah, and to that person who called in, any final words that you'd like to sort of mention to them before we round it out?
One thing that I'm going to say to all of your listeners, not just this caller, I'll let Nick address that one, but to all of your listeners, is get your wills done. Get your wills done, get your affairs in order in general. Don't wait until you're sat in that doctor's room being told, some kind of news. Get that stuff done now, because at the end of the day, that's for you. It's for your loved one. It's for your kids. And it doesn't matter how much money you've got in the bank, whether you own a property. It doesn't. It's for everything. It's like, have a funeral plan. I know it sounds like the most morbid thing in the entire world, but have a funeral plan. Plan how you want your funeral. Plan what music you want, because when you leave it to a loved one to have to do all of that's what's hard. Yeah. Because all they're worrying about is this what they wanted. It's
actually very selfish.
So that's what I'm going to say to all your listeners is do that stuff. And
I think for that particular listener, remembering the days with Nicole, I think, as Nikki said, take the time for yourself. Know that that's okay, and that will make you, as I said, a better wife, a better parent, a better carer. And just try as hard as it is just to enjoy every moment. And when your partner's well enough, do something spontaneous. Take little one out of school for the day. Just have those experiences, because those memories are what you'll cherish.
And it doesn't have to be that trip to Rome.
No,
or, you know,
no.
it doesn't have to be the big extravagant stuff.
No.
But yeah, it's going and having a spontaneous picnic. Or,
Yeah, an ice cream down on the beach or whatever it might be. Just
and take photos,
Yeah.
take videos.
Yeah.
You know, cherish those moments,
Yeah.
remember those moments, be able to reflect back on them with your children
Yeah.
as to what those moments were all about. But it's those little things, like, you know, painting with your like, you know, with your kid and both parents and stuff like that. It just it seems like the small little things, and you know, you I think in a way you feel like it needs to be an extravagant thing of a really nice restaurant or whatever, but it can actually just be the local pub down the road. Like, sorry, local pub down the road. That was such an English thing to say. The wine bar down the road.
Yeah.
But yeah, just it doesn't have to be big and crazy. Just the little things.
Yeah, love that, guys. Thank you so much again for your time, and I hope you enjoyed. I'm sure you helped a lot of people listening. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us.